is still Monday, November 9th, and we're convening for a strategic planning meeting. And let the record reflect that we have all three commissioners present. And first on the chopping block is Miss Maggie Yates and Mike Sparber. Maggie, are you there?
Yeah, she's there.
I'm here, just unmuting. Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks for having us. Director Sparber and I are here to provide an update to the board about the Intake and Releasing Center that the board approved for funding with CARES relief dollars. So we'll just walk you through sort of what the timeline looks like, what the workflow looks like, and what the facility will ultimately look like this morning. And just before we do that, just as a refresher, the facility is really designed to achieve a few things. Primarily, however, it is to help address the spread and exposure of COVID-19 by diverting some of the jail admissions away from jail booking and into the intake and releasing facility, which means fewer people actually going into the jail to potentially introduce or contract COVID-19, and then we'll also enhance social distancing both within the jail booking area and within this new facility. And then it will also sort of, as a byproduct, increase efficiencies for law enforcement by getting in and out faster so they can get back onto the street. And also, ideally, increase stability for the individual coming into contact with the center through the work of a community health worker. Director Sparber, anything else before we get into the meat of the slideshow?
Nope, I think you covered it pretty good. Just maybe in the front end, explain how it's going to be phased out, kind of chunked out. Did you cover that in here?
Yes, there's a couple slides here that we can show the commissioners.
Roger that. I'll be quiet now.
No problem. Ron, if you don't mind going to the next slide. You can see our timeline here. It really only captures the November and December months, but we've had multiple milestones starting back in August with this project. So you can see where we're at today. The site analysis is just wrapping up, and then we'll move into permitting and then contracting. As you can see, it's a very tight timeline. However, we're pushing forward with a launch date of December 30th. And we will sort of go over some of the risks with this timeline at the end of the presentation. But we are moving quickly to get the facility up and running before the end of the year. And the next slide just shows you what the workflow is going to look like. And this was probably familiar to many of you, but basically the patrol officer will make a decision at arrest whether this individual is going to be charged with just a simple misdemeanor or not. Simple misdemeanors are that those charges that are booked and released right now. So the book and release population will be taken to the intake and releasing facility. All other charges will still go to the jail, and that includes felony charges and gross misdemeanors, which are driving under the influence and domestic violence. Once in the intake and releasing center, though, for this book and release population, there'll be an exchange of custody. And then from there, the detention services staff will go through the booking process, which includes fingerprinting and photographs. And then at that point, the individual will be given the opportunity to meet with a community health worker who will be able to identify what sorts of services and referrals might be useful to the individual and meeting that individual's needs back in the community. The stop with the community health worker is not mandatory, but we will have someone in the facility to provide those services. And then whether or not an individual elects to meet with the community health worker, they'll get their property back and then go back home. To start out, we're going to pilot this model Monday through Friday, 3:20 to 11:20. And this is the jail's swing shift. And it also corresponds to at least part of the peak booking times. So this will give us some time to adjust if needed and sort of create a smooth process before we expand the hours. Director Sparber, anything else on this before we move into what we're aiming to launch long-term?
No, I think you covered it pretty good.
Okay. So Ron, the next slide is what we're hoping to move toward long-term, and this is more similar to what several of you saw in Montgomery County, Maryland. So this would include a first appearance component in the facility closer to the point of arrest. We are not able to have this model up and running before the end of the year because it requires so much planning and coordination with law enforcement, court administration, court officers, as well as the public defenders and prosecutors' offices. However, we are meeting every other week to continue to vet this model and determine what it will require to lift up. So this is what we're hoping it will look like eventually, but it does require some significant planning. All right, so this next slide shows you where the intake and releasing facility will be located. It will be installed just north of the DEM building, and there's going to be an enclosed walkway that connects the mobile office unit, this intake and releasing facility, to the jail if and when someone needs to be escorted from the intake and releasing facility to jail. And then the next slide will show you the design of the building. And so you can see that the law enforcement officers will enter in through one door near the pat-down area, and that's where the exchange of custody will occur. And then the detention services officers will conduct the booking functions, and then individuals will wait in an open booking area to meet with the community health worker, or eventually to appear for first appearances if we're able to launch that model. There is a holding area if someone does become combative and needs to be removed, but the open booking area will hopefully allow for easier management for Director Sparber's staff. And then you can see that we are building out for pretrial services and a video courtroom to account for that first appearance model down the line. But those one of those office spaces will be used for the community health worker in the meantime. And then that small office space will be used for confidential medical histories. Director Sparber, anything else on the design?
No, I think you covered it pretty good. You can see between pretrial services and video courtroom, that's the exit going to the jail in the rear of the building. And then folks would enter on one side and come out the other from the front side. And then the property storage unit, I don't know if you've had a chance to look over that, the property storage units, but they're super slick. The property goes in, they are given a code. When they leave, they punch that code in. It's like a FedEx box, kind of in or out. So it works really well. So come up with some good ideas on those. And then, you know, Maggie, thank you for involving most of the staff. I know you've got a lot of good input. And I think it's going really well from our side.
Absolutely. Director Sparber's staff has been great, from IT to their sergeant and lieutenant. The whole leadership team has been really helpful sort of finalizing and finessing this model. Ron, you can go to the next slide, which shows the exterior of the buildings that we'll be getting. We're currently retrofitting 2 of these mobile office units.
Maggie, is that your first customer standing there in that picture?
He's kind of suspect. Yeah.
And then the next slide, I believe, is just an image of those lockers that Director Sparber was talking about. They're what's used for, I think, UPS and Amazon pickups. So some of you might have already used these. But this was an idea that came from detention services, and we're really excited about. We think it'll make things a lot easier, not just for detention services staff, but for law enforcement officers as well.
So the budget really allows for an upscale facility like that?
Yes, it does.
Wow.
Barely.
Wow.
Tweaking it.
And then this last slide just shows some of the risks associated with this first model. We're heading into winter, so hopefully we won't run into any weather delays during installation and integration, but that is one of the risks, along with delays due to COVID-19. But hopefully we will be able to press on sort of unimpeded, and then you can see some of the risks post-launch as well.
I can cover some of the staffing and the negotiations, but we'd have to go into executive session to do that.
Let me ask you this on the negotiation part, other than mentioning that that's ongoing and conclusion. Other than that, you don't have to go into executive session for that part of it.
Okay.
If you're going to go in the weeds with it, we do though.
I think there's some weedy parts in there.
Okay. You probably want to go in executive session pending for labor relations.
It's not all bad news. It's good, but I just
How long would it take?
about 5 minutes.
The chair
Okay.
wants to entertain that, or would you like him to come back maybe later today when we get through with the rest of this?
Why don't you come back? Because we've got several people on the,
We have to unhook
we
everybody.
gotta
from
unhook
executive
everybody and
session.
then come back and stuff. So why don't you come back? We'll have Jeannie give you a call.
Okay.
Yeah. Might be the easiest thing to do. That way we're not consuming a lot of time and energy getting on and off.
Perfect.
Okay?
Thanks, Maggie.
All right.
Great, thank
Got a
you.
question, Mary?
Yes,
Wait a minute, Mary?
Mary?
yes. I was gonna say, before they all go, I'm super excited about this. It's been a long time, I don't know, a couple of years now since we've seen it in action back in Montgomery County. And so I think, based on the sizing, it fits the CARES, need to have that distancing and all of that. So I'm happy that we made this. You guys worked hard to get this done and, have it in place for us by the end of the year. So thank you very much for all the hard work, because I know it's been, trying to put it together quickly, but I think you guys have done a great job. So thank you. And then I guess the last thing I just wanted to ask is everybody else as excited as we are and you guys are? I mean, is law enforcement, are they starting to see that this is really going to happen and it's going to be beneficial?
Well, it's changed, Commissioner CUNY. So we're working through some of those, and it's like Maggie said, it's probably going to take a few more conversations to actually get to the phase 2 part. As far as my staff is concerned, it's changed, something different. So it's, I don't know how overly excited they are, but they're piqued their interest about the concept, I guess is the best way to say it. So.
Okay, great.
And I would just add, Commissioner Keeney, that in conversations about this first phase model, the law enforcement officers and representatives that we've been working with at least have expressed excitement over this, because we're building out for additional property space, which will cut down the times and occurrences of law enforcement officers having to trek out to Al-Qaeda store oversized property, which sometimes happens at the jail right now. So that I think is of significant interest for the patrol officers.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, I think this actually started pre-COVID, if anybody remembers back to that.
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay. Very good.
So
So we'll
the
call
BC,
you,
we're going to
Kevin,
say
come back.
PC from here on out.
Yeah.
PC, very PC.
It'll be pre-COVID instead of
COVID.
Nobody will
Okay.
remember life after or before.
So do we have Doug Chase joining us? Chris.
Yeah,
Oh.
Chris. Hi, Chris.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think Doug may be joining us, but I know he had a kid's eye doctor appointment, so apologize if he's a few minutes late here. I did have a quick presentation for your consideration here about capital funding for the 2021 budget here. And I might actually share my screen, or no, you've got it pulled up there.
You can do it.
Okay, so while we have several items identified within our current park capital facilities plan for 2021, we're here today to talk specifically about the miscellaneous capital improvements line item project for 2021 that we're proposing here. So next slide, please. During the pandemic, visitation within county parks has easily doubled within our park system. And one of the many activities that has exploded in popularity during this time is the sport of pickleball. While popular with all ages, the greatest growth appears to be within our senior population. And park staff has been hearing from a growing number of communities interested in more opportunities to play pickleball. We've also heard from tennis players requesting improvements to existing facilities that are outdated and in various stages of disrepair. According to the Sports Fitness Industry Association of 2019 report, pickleball is one of the fastest growing sports in the US with over 3.3 million participants. And tennis remains a popular sport with about 18 million total participants in the US. So this growing participation rate seen nationally for pickleball is also being felt locally, as demand currently exceeds available courts in Spokane County, resulting in long waits for court use and numerous phone calls to Director Chase asking for more pickleball courts. So the photos on the left side of the screen here are our existing Holmberg Park courts. Next slide, please. So to meet that demand, Spokane County Parks Rec and Golf has built dedicated pickleball courts at Prairie View and Bidwell Community Parks, and other communities are looking to renovate existing tennis courts, converting a portion of these courts to pickleball. Recent trends include courts with acrylic surface coatings that are more desirable to play on. So here we've just got a map of showing Holmberg Community Park and Linwood Community Park, which are two sites that we're considering here today. Next slide, please. So in response to this demand that we've seen and the need to address these existing aging courts within our park system, staff has executed a mini planning process, meeting with a stakeholder group of pickleball players and reached out to tennis advocates to gain input and develop some initial design concepts that were used in this online survey to help staff understand the needs of the community. We did receive over 200 responses to this survey from primarily pickleball and tennis players. As you can see, about 87% of the respondents were pickleball players. And as a result, we brought design concepts to the Park Advisory Committee last week, as well as the survey results, and reviewed all those with the Park Advisory Committee. And by unanimous vote, the Park Advisory Committee recommended the following design and improvements to the Park Director to bring forth before you today. Slide, please. So in response to the feedback received from the community, this was the preferred design alternative. At Holmberg Parks, the courts would be converted to 8 dedicated pickleball courts. And at Linwood Park, the courts would be reconstructed to provide 2 dedicated tennis courts. This option, which we called option B, was the preferred design alternative, and it was recommended by the Park Advisory Committee, like I said, by a unanimous vote. So one thing to note here as part of these park reconstruction projects or court reconstruction projects is that we would be taking on a long-term maintenance obligation of about $20,000 to $30,000 every 5 to 10 years. So this acrylic surface, once it wears out, every 5 to 10 years has to get resurfaced. And so you don't have to rebuild the whole court, but it is a long-term cost obligation that we would be taking on here. So as you can see, about $320,000 would allow us to reconstruct both courts. And then the Park Advisory Committee also recommended that we request funding of about $220,000 to provide lighting at Holmberg Park as well, if funding is available. So we do have a lot more information, but I know we don't have all the time. So that's the presentation in a nutshell. I would be happy to answer any questions if you have any at this time.
Jerry, Chris, can you, Ron, can you go back? Go back to the slide. I'm looking at Linwood Park, option B. Is that the court in Linwood that you've set up the basketball court, or is that separate?
We're kind of looking at the basketball court separately. On the right-hand side of the screen here is the Linwood courts, that little gray rectangle on the top left of that graphic.
That's where the current basketball court is?
Correct. So in this proposal, we wouldn't be touching the basketball court.
Okay, thank you. Well, and the reason I bring that up is I've driven by that park literally 1,000 times back and forth to work. I've almost constantly see people playing basketball, even in bad weather. I've seen people playing tennis once.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that was part of some of the complaints that we got from the pickleball community, was that there were these courts that were being underutilized. And some of the concepts that we explored initially were mixed use at both sites, where you could play tennis and pickleball at Holmberg and Linwood. However, some of the feedback we received was some concern about the mixed lines on the courts being confusing, and also just sort of having dedicated areas, in particular for pickleball, to have groups of people who wanted to play a pickup game be able to all show up at one court, and they would know that all pickleball players were there if there were others wanting to play pickup games at that time.
Thank you. So what makes pickleball so popular?
You know, there's less movement required as far as like chasing down a tennis ball. There's tennis courts, as you can see, on one tennis court, you can fit 4 pickleball courts. And so there's less movement and yet it's still, you're able to play it with lower mobility. And so it's just a smaller court, easier to track down balls, especially compared to tennis. It's sort of a combination of tennis and ping pong almost. And so it's just become a hugely popular sport. We've got about 1,000 players in the community that have been very vocal in requesting additional court space.
I noticed, Chris, that in North Park that, you know, is a gym, but for years was very popular because it was an indoor tennis courts. They've taken one of those tennis courts indoors and made the whole thing into a pickleball. And as you walk through there, there'll be people playing tennis, and there's usually 2 or 4 people. And you go into the one that they've renovated into the pickleball, and it's like your Holberg slide where it has the floor. And there's not only all age groups playing, little kids, older folks and stuff, but there's people on each side waiting to play, sitting there waiting to get in. It's just amazing.
But if the goal is less movement, is there less movement on the couch?
Well, yeah, so it's probably a lot cheaper too.
Okay. Any, Mary?
Yeah, so there's much less, you know, force too on the body. So you're not, I mean, people aren't blowing their knees out, their shoulders. It's much better on their shoulders because it's just not the force of tennis. But yeah, so I mean, it's become huge. I know at the hub, I mean, they're indoor. I mean, that was pretty much what was happening indoors during school, was pickleball prior to this. Like I said, down here at Edgecliff Park, it's completely, you know, on the, you know, when I drive by there, I mean, there's people, you know, taking the old tennis courts there and, you know, putting little cones out so that way they can make, you know, use of it as a pickleball floor there every day. You know, but then, you know, there too, I also see where the tennis courts get used for basketball, you know. It's interesting how much it's changed, but I mean, pickleball really is kind of the new up and coming, and has been for a while. I mean, our sport court, we striped for pickleball. You know, so the question is to Gary, where do we find the funding for this?
Well, obviously, this would come out of capital reserves.
So is this
If that's a priority, and I don't know if you're intending to make a decision today, but I'd suggest that you take a look at all the capital spending requests so that you can internally prioritize them.
Is this available out of REIT 2 funding?
It is.
Yeah, so I guess that's where I'd want to see where we are in REIT 2.
It is.
Okay.
So I wasn't, yeah, that's where I was thinking it wasn't capital, it was more REIT 2 funding, but I don't know where we're at there. So that's my question.
I think that's a really good point, Mary, is that we'd like to get a list of not only the capital request to make priorities, but we probably have obviously more than one request for REIT dollars that we probably want to sit down and discuss too.
Yeah, only if you don't want to keep spending the same dollars out of REIT.
Yeah, spend them twice. We don't want to spend them twice.
Because I mean, Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, the other projects that are on the list that were funded, those were all out of REIT 2 funds. Is that correct? I see you on the phone.
Yeah, I'm here. Hopefully you can hear me. I think some of those are REIT 1 and many are REIT 2. It can vary from year to year, and we always take a look at the criteria too.
Okay. And so these would all be, even the lighting, would this all be eligible out of REIT 2?
It would. Potentially
I would expect it to be if it's as a park improvement or a park reconstruction.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And yeah, our intent was not to jump ahead of the line, but just to make sure that we had this request on the list along with others when you consider them, and we always appreciate consideration.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Nice presentation, Chris. Thanks.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, great job. And yeah, no, I just need to figure out how we fund it.
Thank you very much.
All right, so next up, Mr. Cook and team.
It's got a long last name.
You're on mute, Kevin.
Hey, Ben, are you like in a helicopter or something? Awesome.
Driving now.
Thank you very much. We just wanted to get together with the board briefly and let you know that tomorrow on your consent agenda, we have the purchase and sale agreement with the Central Valley School District for the property for the Doris Morrison Learning Center.
Yay. I'm excited.
I want to thank Commissioner CUNY for her extensive assistance with this. We're finally to a point where we can move forward and get a closing date set up for later this year to close on the property. And what it entails is that Central Valley is giving us, for $1, they're giving us a 2-acre site for the Learning Center itself. In addition to that, we are, and please go to the next exhibit if you would. We are also purchasing 2 acres of property that is immediately adjacent to our property along the trail there. You can see that in this diagram, that cross-hatched area that runs along the boundary in kind of an irregular shape to each side of the Learning Center. And we're buying that 2 acres because that's where the trail goes. There's already an existing trail, and we are buying property so that our property line is to the north side of the existing trail location. And so this is great news for us. We're looking forward to working out the details of the easements for the road and the easements for the utilities. And with regard to the road, we're engaging with the Valley Real Life Church now to put together the final deal for how we jointly build that road as well. So this is one step in the process, but it's an important step. It puts us squarely moving forward with the school district to finalize and close on the property before the end of the year. So just wanted to chat with the board for a couple of minutes about this before it appears on your 2 o'clock tomorrow, and see if there were any questions.
Any questions for Kevin? Mary?
Yeah, as you can tell, I'm just excited that this has taken a long time to get there, to make happen. I'm excited that the additional property purchase will happen for the trail too, because then you can just do what the plan is and not have to be worrying about that.
I meant to point out that, and thanks for the reminder, that while they're giving us the Learning Center site for $1, we asked them to sell us the additional 2 acres for $15,000. So the site is being given to us in essence, and then we are buying the additional 2 acres.
Which I felt was very appropriate and very fair. So, and just shows a partnership from Central Valley's perspective, that they saw the need, or the enhancement of having that learning center there, you know, for school children and all kinds of learning. So, so I appreciate their partnership in helping us get there and make that happen, and look forward to that going forward in the future.
Okay, Josh, any comments? All right, very good.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Kevin, were you going to touch on the 6-year plan real quick that's going to be on the consent agenda tomorrow?
Well, that's a hearing that's right after the consent agenda tomorrow.
Oh,
or I
thank
guess-
you. That's
But,
right.
but it is a public hearing, and I would expect and bet all the money in my pocket that we will not have any public comment. It's, now that I've said that, we'll have 80, but it's usually kind of a, not a real exciting document. It basically just lines out our sewer expenses over the course of the next 6 years. And we update that every year, just like the road plan is a 6-year road plan.
Right.
So it's something that we'll be presenting with a very short presentation. Mark Stilt and I will be with you tomorrow to present that. And as I said, I wouldn't expect much input from the public on that.
Okay,
Thanks, Kevin.
thank you, Kevin.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
You bet. So, next is back to Carrie Griddle and CARES funding. Carrie, you're up.
I don't know if Dan's on yet or not.
Yeah, Dan's there. He's up
Okay,
there.
perfect.
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
All right. We have Dan from Pioneer to present to the commissioners. Dan, do you want to go through your proposal?
Sure, yeah. Hello, everyone. Thanks for the chance to go over this proposal with you for some CARES funding. So we really were looking for funding for to help cover the expenses for COVID-related costs in 2 of our programs for some of the costs incurred from March through October, and then also for some future expenses that we see throughout the rest of the year through the end of December 2020. So the first one is at Pioneer Center East. That's our residential treatment program. And so that is, it operates in a dorm setting. So when COVID hit, we had to make a number of adjustments in order to create a quarantine unit so that people could, when they were coming in from the community, we had to have a 14-day quarantine period before they could go into the general dorm area. And so what that entailed is, additional PPE and other supplies, as well as staffing in order to get that in order to get the quarantine unit up and running, and then to provide the additional, cleaning and sanitation and everything else that's gone along with COVID. In this, we're just asking for just those cleaning supplies, and then the additional medical supplies that we were using for that area. And then the Carlisle and Pathways, this is about 140 units of low-income housing that we have in downtown Spokane. And so about 140 people live in the housing, and it's shared common areas and shared hallways. So we really, since COVID hit, had to really up our cleaning of those areas and sanitation expenses, and as well as bringing in some additional janitorial staff to help keep everything safe and clean. And so, so for the expenses incurred from March to October, those are the programs we are looking for some help with. And then going forward, upcoming November through December, we've been looking for some time to create a front-facing access from our for behavioral health and medical services from our Carlisle. We have a clinic area there that's already set up for a clinic that used to be used for that, but we just need to set up external access. And the goal is that we're trying to provide more access to care for people who are homeless or have limited access due to COVID for behavioral health services. And so right now we have that clinic functioning mostly just to serve internally, the people that live in our housing, but we'd like to make it more available for people that are either homeless or just having other challenges accessing behavioral health care. So there's some medical, some medical expenses that would go along, primarily PPE, but then some additional expenses as well for just supplies. Other supplies that would just be startup type expenses for a medical space. So we are looking for some funding for that. So if you look at the budget for the Carlisle and Pathways housing, we were looking at asking for $30,000 in the janitorial salaries and benefits. And then for Pioneer Center East, which is the the inpatient dorm setting where we set up the quarantine unit that I was referring to, looking for funding for some of those expenses that weren't covered for our medical supplies and cleaning supplies. And then for the future setup for the clinic space at the Carlisle, we were looking for $3,000. And then for the Carlisle Pathways housing for ongoing janitorial supplies, we were looking at about $8,000. So that is really what we were wanting to bring up with you today. Happy to answer any questions or anything that you would like to know.
Any questions for Dan? Barry?
So I guess it's kind of my standard question for Carrie to make sure that she's vetted these and that they're all valid and that the time and effort for the salaries is going to be is done. Or Dan, I guess you can, you can probably say if you vetted it through Carrie, and then on the janitorial salaries, just anytime I see salaries, it says, federal reporting requires time and effort, and so making sure you guys have done that since you're going back.
Yeah. Yeah, we can absolutely provide all that.
Okay.
And if Carrie's talking, you're still muted, Carrie.
Sorry, I was busy. I was busy coming up with lyrics for you today, Commissioner.
Okay.
Yeah, Dan and I worked on this proposal last week. I'm comfortable that we can get time and effort certs and timesheets to support any expense request due to salaries and benefits that would pass audit inspection on this.
Okay, great. That's my main concern, because otherwise it all appears valid COVID related expenses. And I guess, Dan, just curious question: how have you guys done through the COVID? With have you had any outbreaks, or have you been pretty fortunate?
We've been pretty fortunate. I think we've had one, or I guess we've had two staff members that tested positive, but both of them did not expose. They were in the office very limited and didn't expose others. And so we haven't had any of our actual patients have COVID. And we've been able to we've had some rapid testing at the inpatient treatment facility when people have had symptoms. But being able to have that quarantine unit has really helped, I think, minimize any risks. But we've been pretty fortunate.
Good, thank you.
Okay, so you guys are okay. Open to a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve and authorize CARES Act funding expenditures up to the amount of $61,500 for Pioneer Human Services for COVID-related expenses as presented today by Dan Sigler.
I will second that.
Got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, let the record reflect the motion passed unanimously.
Thank you very much. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, next up is Steve Jurich with Campfire. Steve, are you with us? There you are. So, Steve, you're muted.
Okay, I think I'm with you now.
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, well, our funding request is for added expenses related to our day camp program we ran this summer, and what we're calling our remote learning center, which we're conducting right now out at the day camp site. With a lot of work, staff put together a plan for summer where we felt that we could offer our day camp program in a safe environment. And so that required doing things quite differently. Some of it dictated by the governor, some of it recommendations that we got either from the local health district or from American Camp Association. So our staffing expenses were much higher. A couple of the things that we did, we had 2 staff that were just dedicated to sanitation duties. And so, you know, every examples would, well, just general spaces, tables, things like that, but exercise, or not exercise, but equipment, like we had to do sanitization between every use of bow and arrow on the archery range, as an example. So there was extra staff for that. We also had added staff because we reduced the size of the group, our groups. So we worked with, we put kids in pods, what we call them. So typically we would have group sizes of 8 to 10 children. We had reduced group sizes of 6 to 8 children, and more like 6. So that, and then we didn't mix the groups. So the groups stayed intact in their, for their activities, and we did not mix group to group. An example of how that helped and came into play was we did get a call from the health district in the middle of the summer, letting us know that a parent of a couple of the campers, and that had been with us a prior week. So this was a week after they were had left, but a parent had tested positive for two of the kids. Fortunately, the 2 kids were in the same group, so we were able to notify the other families that were part of that group and make them aware that a parent of a couple of our campers had tested positive. So then they can watch for signs or choose to have their kids tested, that sort of thing. We never did hear anything back from any of the families, but that would be an example of how smaller pods of children was effective for us. We had additional expenses, obviously, it's in sanitation and PPE supplies. The kids and staff were masked up all summer. And then we had to purchase additional items like thermometers and things. The campers and staff went through a health screening every morning when they arrived and temperatures checked. Campers and staff wore masks the entire time they were at camp. And then in the remote learning, we're typically, we don't program when the kids are in school. So we're paying staff to offer program during a time that we normally wouldn't be having that expense. We boosted our internet so that we could accommodate many laptops for the learning. And then we're maintaining garbage service where we normally wouldn't have that because we wouldn't have the all-day programming like we're doing now. And then some increased utility costs because we're using the building all day, where this time of year our programming is pretty limited. And then I guess I didn't address food. Normally we serve, we buy kind of bulk and serve, and I had some examples. I asked my camp director to give me examples But these are items that we normally would do bulk, but have had to purchase in individual packages to give to the kids. And examples of that are carrots, potato chips, juice boxes, string cheese, all the condiments, mustard, mayonnaise, sour cream, ketchup, those kinds of things.
Steve, can you talk about at your current day camp? You provided me with some information about what school districts the kids are in currently that are at your day camp.
Yeah, well, I got for the remote learning that we're doing now. We have kids that are from Spokane Public Schools, West Valley School District, Liberty School District, and some private schools. For the summer, they come from all over the county. So I would say every area school district is represented during our summer program because we're working with much greater numbers.
Okay. Very good. Any questions for Steve? Mary?
No. I think, thank you, Steve. We definitely have wanted to help fund these different day camps, to keep kids learning and keeping them on target and on track. So glad that you're able to help with that.
Yeah, well, thank you. We feel awfully good about it too.
Okay, Josh?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve and authorize CARES funds be dispersed up to the amount of $78,245 to Campfire Inland Northwest as presented by Steve Jurek today.
I second that.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let the record reflect the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Steve.
This
Thanks
is
for all you're
wonderful
doing.
news. Wonderful news. Thank you very much.
You betcha. All right, next up, we have Vaughn. Are you joining us?
I don't see her on yet.
She should be, because she responded saying that she was available, but we can go with Excelsior since Excelsior is on the line if we want to.
Who's the Michael with? On the lower right?
That is Excelsior.
Okay. All right, so why don't we go ahead and deal with Excelsior, and then we can come back with VOA when they get on board with this. So who's, go ahead.
Ryan, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Ryan Kiley with Excelsior. I'm the Executive Vice President of our programs.
Okay, so I've got Andrew Hill here as the presenter. Is it Andrew, or are you doing it, Ryan?
I'm doing it along with Mike Grundy, who's on the call as well.
Okay, floor is yours.
Great. Well, thanks for meeting with us today. I wanted to give you a brief overview of what we've going on in Excelsior and how these funds will help us maintain continuity of our programs. Excelsior has 4 entities right now. One of the entities we'll be discussing today is Excelsior Holistic Schools that serves upwards of 50 students within the Spokane County. They're all 504 special ed students. We've been able to keep that program open and on site in a rotating schedule throughout the pandemic. The reason we've done that is because these youth have pretty significant behavioral health challenges, and we think it's important that we get as much face time and in the seat time as we can, and also get them connected to our behavioral health continuum and primary care services while they're on site. We also have a primary care facility, so that serves the entire age range. We're working on becoming a foster care center of excellence, and we'll be accepting foster care, particularly with foster care and primary care, providing their physical health needs. And that location is is up north in Nevada, called Family Care Spokane. We also have our residential and inpatient facilities, and we've done some unique things to keep that operational during the pandemic. That's a real difficult thing to do. If the virus is introduced there, it's difficult to maintain appropriate staffing levels in a 24-hour facility. We have a transitional living program there. We have intensive treatment for substance use. We'll be the first family-initiated substance use treatment provider for adolescents. That'll be opening up hopefully next month. And then we'll be looking on bringing on some additional services for younger youth. Currently, we're sending a lot of youth to Idaho to receive treatment services. And then we have a continuum of behavioral health services for outpatient outreach and engagement, all the way up to some pretty significant wraparound services for families with more intensive needs. What we're asking for is a couple different asks, and they're all about maintaining continuity of care and providing adequate PPE testing and sanitation so that we can maintain as open an environment as we can. As the needs of the community we anticipate throughout the fall, and people are projecting that the behavioral health needs of folks is going to be more significant. The sanitation and maintenance personnel, we've had to develop we're working on developing constantly updating our facility maintenance protocols and procedures, so that way we can keep sanitation to where it needs to be. We've had to develop ways to do smaller pods of learning environments, smaller pods of intensive services, and reconstruct and reorganize the way that the facility moves. So having additional people to help support that effort moving into the new year or finishing up in January would be really helpful to give us a leg up as we're in that flu season and the virus is upticking. Some single-use trays is helpful. We've already purchased those. It allows us to keep the environment clean. We serve a lot of different types of folks in different entry points in our facilities, and rather than having to bring on more FTE or more people to do screening at different entry points, these thermal screeners will help us get more people throughout the facility in a quicker time period. We see the testing and supplies for facilities as very important for maintaining continuity of care. It'll help us screen for staff. We've got 4 analyzers en route and some testing supplies. This will allow us to really increase that, offering more in the community, but also, and then focusing on a test-based strategy for our intensive inpatient and our schools to keep people in schools, in treatment as safely as possible. We've made significant investment into our PPE, but those costs are mounting, and this gives us hand sanitizers and different ability to clean quicker with misters and different cleaning supplies, and additional PPE for employees and service participants. So that was kind of the kind of quick overview, and I'd love to take questions, but first I'll kick it to Mike to chime in on if there's anything that I missed.
No, Ryan, that sounded great. Our primary goal here is to be able to allow clients to participate in a face-to-face environment whenever we possibly can, and create some sense of normalcy back in their lives, which we've found to be a significant part of their recovery in general, and a necessary part. So all of this is around creating a safe and efficient environment for providing the human element of treatment, which is a face-to-face program. So I hope that is evident in what we're trying to do.
Okay, any questions, Mary?
Yeah, so so just with some of this, like, with doing the thermal scanners, because we haven't done that for others. And so just kind of really seeing what your need is and why you're wanting to do that. How many people are going through it, all of those things. So some of the questions on that. And then on the testing, if you guys are doing so you guys will be doing the testing. You actually have nurses on site that
Yes.
do all of that. So you actually, okay. And then just kind of knowing numbers of the facility, because I have not toured the facility yet, so I don't know what your numbers are.
Oh, great.
So that's kind of, you know, my questions are surrounding that as to, you know, why the large numbers.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll take this at one at a time. So we have our staff is 180. We have a staffing of 180, and service participant across our continuum varies depending on the acuity. The reason we're wanting this many testing is because it will allow us to have a test-based strategy to augment some of our COVID mitigation strategies, particularly in the residential component. So we can test more frequently and not be beholden to the requirements that the community may have for testing. We ran into this last week. We had our first staff test positive of all those 180 staff, and the amount of time it took to get testing and get people prepared with the appropriate language to communicate to the health system the need. And we went through a lot of tests just in the community. So having our own tests and our ability to provide those, and these numbers seem about right for that continuum. And then also we have a primary care clinic that serves getting the call. How do I cut that off? That serves individuals in the community. So a number of those will be allocated to that population as well. And there is anywhere from 70 to 80 visits a day in that particular environment. Regarding the thermal scanners, we've had to spread out the facility, like I said, to have a COVID mitigation plan, and we've had to bring on staff to be at different locations so that we can have different entry points. This will allow us to place those at the different components of our facility so that we can be efficient with our check-in process and see more people. We have an aging building with poor ventilation throughout the facility. We're looking to update those in this year, but it's not updated. So we really have to have a cautious approach to the entering into the facilities. And we believe that this will speed up that process and not have people waiting in their cars and outside. Again, it's all with the aim of getting people in the door.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any questions, Josh? Okay, so what would be the will?
Oh, and Carrie, you sign off on all this?
Be scared that it's gonna go too long.
Carrie, you're on mute.
If I could ever get off of mute, my mouse is jumping all over the place here. I'm sorry. Yes, I have. I've worked with Excelsior last week.
All right.
So, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I move to approve and authorize expenditures up to $144,100 for COVID-related expenses as presented today by Excelsior.
I'll second that.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, let the record reflect motion passed unanimously. Thank you very much for what you guys are doing, Ryan and Michael.
Yeah.
Thank you, commissioners.
Good to see you folks, and we'll have to have you out to the center sometime soonish. Who knows, right? All right.
All right, and so now we've been joined by Vaughn, with Volunteers of America. And so Vaughn, the floor is yours. And you're on mute. It'll be a short presentation.
You would think after all these Zoom meetings, we'd figure out how to unmute ourselves quickly. So my apologies. So I'm Fawn Sean. I'm the CEO at Volunteers of America. And thank you so much for providing this opportunity for nonprofits to fill the gaps. So as you, I'm sure, have heard all day, the pandemic certainly hit all of us unexpectedly, and we weren't necessarily prepared for it, but we've pivoted as fast as possible. The biggest need that we're having is cleaning requirements. We really value outcomes at our organization and want to make sure that people have the services they need and staff present for them to help them move through their goals so they can graduate out of our program, because our goal for that is 2 to 3 years. What we're having to have most of our staff doing right now is cleaning because of COVID. And we have 8 different locations across this community, plus another 100 single apartments all across this Spokane County. And so our staff have had to just pick up the lift in our permanent supported housing programs. And so what we're asking for today is some funds to be able to pay for our intentional cleaning plan and adding some additional janitorial time, getting some cleaning carts so that we can have it at each location, so we're not having to move items from location to location, that we can have it there and present for efficiency. And we just need some simple things like garbage cans and additional cleaning supplies at all of our different locations. So pretty simple request. We just want to make sure that all of our buildings are clean, that we aren't running the risk that our high touch areas can be sanitized and taken care of on a daily basis, so that we can diminish how many people are impacted by getting COVID.
Okay, thank you, Fawn. So any questions, Mary?
Yeah, I'm just gonna, so I know you worked with Carrie on this. I mean, so I'm just curious that if this is enough to cover all those costs or not. I don't know if I should be saying that or not, but it's a pretty small amount considering all that you're doing. And I know, you're up in our facility up there, and so just want to make sure on that. And then, just seeing how you guys are doing with COVID in your facilities, if you've seen any outbreaks or not, or that.
Yeah, thanks, Mary, for the question. Part of the restraints of this grant is that it has to be spent out by the 31st. So the reality is that such a short time frame, we aren't going, we just wouldn't use more than that between that time, especially for janitorial time. So that's the reason for the small amount, unfortunately. As for if we could extend it through all of the rest of this year, which we anticipate be needing it then, we would probably have a different ask. It's just because of the short time frame. And then anything other on that, Mary?
So, because I know that you can go back for, some of it, you can go back. So I didn't know if you'd discuss that with Carrie or not.
We were able to cover those funds with another federal source, so we wouldn't be able to double dip on that. So we just wanted to make sure we were allocating our funds properly.
Yes, no, but you did get additional federal dollars then to help support that. So, okay, great.
Yep, we sure did. And then the question around COVID, we have been incredibly lucky. We have, of course, put extra measures in. We take temperatures and do check-ins of all of the women and the young people at the shelter. Every day they wear masks unless they're on their bed, which is socially distanced from every other shelter guest. Luckily, the apartments, an individual can socially distance there. We have had 2 outbreaks, one with an individual who was a resident in one of our units. And she was able to just isolate in her unit, and we were able to bring her the supplies and food that she needed so she could quarantine. And that settled itself, and she's been healthy, and that building's remained healthy. We did have a staff individual at Hope House test positive, but luckily everybody was wearing their masks, and we followed health measures and Dr. Lutz's orders, so we were pretty good, and nobody else came down with it. So we are fingers crossed, and just, I think, holding our breath like everybody else and doing the best we can.
Right. No, great. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for all you're doing, because I know it's challenging in these times. So thank you.
We're all in it together. No one's away. No one's getting out of this one. So,
Josh?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve and authorize CARES dollars be expended in the amounts of up to $13,000 for Volunteers of America as presented by Fawn Schott today.
I will second that.
Got a motion and a second. Any additional conversation? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, let the record reflect the motion passed unanimously. Thank you, Fawn, for all you're doing. Stay safe.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate you.
Okay, so that completes everything that we had on the agenda this morning for CARES. Carrie, anything else that you want to share with us, warn us about?
I'll probably be reaching out to all of you separately. I'm working on some things that probably will be discussing with all of you this week about final totals, where we're at, where we'll be probably by next week. So I'll be reaching out to all of you this week. The other thing I wanted to, non-CARES related, just give you a heads up tomorrow, all 3 of the capital funding grant contracts are on the agenda, and that's for the mental health stabilization facility. I wanted to just give you kind of an update that they finally all came from the Department of Commerce, so we'll be able to pull those dollars down now for the building of the facility.
Okay, very good.
Good job, Carrie.
Thank you, Carrie. More tomorrow.
Oh yeah, you'll probably get a giant packet again tomorrow from me.
We look forward to them.
Oh, I'm sure.
Okay, so now we're going to go into an executive session for the purposes of discussing pending potential litigation. Present will be executive C-suite and all 3 commissioners, and be joined by Mark McLean. We will be in executive session for approximately 30 minutes. All right.
And then were we going to add as Director Sparber to come back?
Yeah, so we'll come out whenever we're done with this, and then go back in with Sparber. Unless there's, because we don't know exactly when he's coming back.
We don't anticipate any action.
What's that?
We don't anticipate any action.
No. Don't anticipate any action.
I don't think so.
Yeah, so
20 minutes?
30?
I don't even think it'll be that.
You don't think 30? Okay, 20. So it is now 3:09. By the time we get into executive session, it'll be 3:10, and we'll be in executive session until 3:30. Okay,